Thank you. Thank you, Yasmin. And thanks to all speakers for this dynamic opening session, which leads to our next session, which is so important, a spotlight on Afghanistan, which, of course, unfortunately, is more topical than ever. We are in a time where there's been 500 days since the de facto authorities' ban on girls' secondary education in Afghanistan. We put together a powerful panel to explore the education crisis and also touch on the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Afghanistan today. And we're very, very pleased that this panel is going to be led by best-selling author and leading foreign correspondent, Christina Lamb. Christina, as you may know, has reported from some of the world's biggest hotspots, including Afghanistan, and she has authored numerous best-selling books, including I Am Malala. Christina, thank you, and over to you. Hello.
Thanks. Thank you, Melissa. I think pink is the color today. So it's a great honor to be here and moderate this really important discussion on Afghanistan with such an eminent panel, two of whom I'm happy to say are old and dear friends of mine. So with me this morning, I have Somaya Faruqi, who is captain of the Afghan girls' robotics team and now a refugee in the United States. I also have Ziauddin Yousafzai, who I originally knew many years ago as an activist in his own right in Pakistan, but now I think he doesn't mind me describing him as being better known as the father of Malala. I'm also delighted to have Fawzia Koofi, another old friend who is an Afghan MP who survived 2 assassination attempts and has sadly also been forced to leave Afghanistan. And last but not least, someone who's very well known to you, Gordon Brown, the United Nations Special Envoy for Education, and also former Prime Minister of my country, the United Kingdom, which has subsequently had quite a few prime ministers. So more details are in the bios you have in your packs, but this is a really important session. We don't have much time for it, so I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to ask all our panelists to be succinct. So over the last week, you will all have seen the horrendous scenes from Turkey and Syria after the devastating earthquake and resulting humanitarian crisis. Next week, we'll also see the 1-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine, which I'm actually heading off to from here. War and natural disaster, of course, pose enormous challenges for children's education, and the two stories are rightly dominating the news agenda at the moment. But as we gather here this morning to discuss such challenges and to raise vital funds for Education Cannot Wait, there is one country which has dropped out of the headlines, but where girls and women need help more than anywhere else on earth, and that is Afghanistan. 2 decades of educational progress has literally been wiped out in 18 months by the return of the Taliban and the devastating restrictions they have imposed on women and girls. Afghanistan today is the only place on earth where girls are banned from high school. Today marks 514 days that schools have been closed. As if that were not enough, recent months have seen more and more restrictions, banning women from university, going to gyms or parks, even working for NGOs to deliver critical aid. One Afghan girl recently told me, soon they will say there is a shortage of oxygen, so only men are allowed to breathe. Personally, I've been reporting on Afghanistan for 35 years. It's where I started off as a foreign correspondent during the Soviet occupation in the 1980s. Since the Taliban took over in August 2021, I have been back 3 times, and I still find it hard to get my head around what has happened. It is utterly heartbreaking to see girls forced to stay behind four walls. Yet at the same time, there are some remarkable women and girls still trying to work there, running secret schools or projects, and also outside the country, courageously speaking out to tell their stories and demand their rights. Somaya Faruqi is one such advocate, and it's a privilege to invite her to address us. But before Somaya speaks, we're going to hear from another woman who has stood up to the Taliban and has been fighting for education ever since.
Dignitaries, ministers, and distinguished guests, it has been more than 500 days of the ban on girls' education in Afghanistan. I remember the time when I could not go to school because of a similar ban. And the longer we were out of school, the more worried we were, because we knew that after a time we will be forgotten. And this is exactly what is happening in Afghanistan. Women and girls are worried that they will be forgotten. We should not be accepting the excuses given by the Taliban or the justifications given by the Taliban. It is time for world leaders to unite, to become one voice for Afghan women and girls. And it is time that we find ways in which we ensure that the Afghan people are not left behind, that the Afghan children are not left behind. I hope that leaders will find ways to fund and facilitate education to every child in Afghanistan. They will find ways to protect the human rights of all individuals in Afghanistan, including women and girls and minorities and people from every ethnicity. And I hope that this time we will ensure that we make no compromise on the rights of women and girls with the Taliban. And I hope that our leaders will ensure that they take this issue as a serious and urgent issue, and we do not wait for many more conferences like this. I hope that this conversation does not happen again like 6 months later or a year later. I hope something happens right now. I have one final request from you all, and that is all that happens, those conversations, discussions, negotiations, at the center of it all must be the voices of Afghan women and girls. Decisions cannot be made on their behalf when they are not present in the room. So listen to the Afghan women who are speaking to you all, who are raising their voices. Listen to the Afghan women who are protesting every day in the streets of Afghanistan, who are putting their lives at risk and who are being arrested, who are being tortured. So listen to their voices, include them in the conversations, include them in the negotiations. And I hope that we will unite to ensure that we protect the human rights of women and girls in Afghanistan, and we ensure that Afghan children do not miss the basic human right of education, that Afghan girls are not denied this basic human right. So I hope that this call will be heard. Thank you.
Soraya, I know that you and Malala have been working together to raise awareness of what's going on in Afghanistan, including speaking to the UN General Assembly last year. Can I invite you up to talk about Afghanistan? Thanks.
Imagine being part of a generation where your dreams are shattered, your voice is silenced, and your basic human rights are stripped away from you. This is a reality of me, Somaya Faruqi, and millions of Afghan girls that just have a dream of becoming an engineer, a doctor, or a teacher. Exactly 514 days ago, my heart was shattered along with the hearts of millions of girls inside Afghanistan. After the Taliban took over the country, they unleashed terror upon us, tearing apart our families and our homes, and leaving us hopeless in a world that no longer feels like our own. The horrors continued to escalate when Taliban issued their cruel ban on girls' education, converting our homes into prison cells and denying us from our basic human rights to go to university, to go to a school, gyms, parks, restaurants, or even to work in national and international NGOs to financially support our families. This is not just an assault to our dignity. This is a humanitarian catastrophe that tears at the fabric of our society. Today, we are all here for one common and shared purpose: education. Education is the key to unlock the limitless potential within each child, but it's unfortunate that even in 2023, there are 222 million children that are deprived from the right of education, from the basic human right. This is a tragedy beyond measure, and if we look in each corner of the globe, we can clearly see that girls and children are suffering from that. From Afghanistan, where girls' education is completely banned, to the Ethiopia, where child marriages and early marriages prevent girls from obtaining an education. From Sudan, where displacement and distraction hinder educational opportunities, to the Nigeria, where girls do not have their safety and security in schools. 222 million children are missing the opportunity of education. It means that we are missing 222 millions of incredible talent. The future leaders, the scientists, the writers, the doctors, the engineers, and many, many more. We cannot afford to waste any talent, and the hope of all these children is on you, world leaders and donors, to support, to help, and to fund the education system in every crisis-affected country. Not just in stand in solidarity, because solidarity without action cannot do anything. We need to come together to make this tragedy of denying the education and turn it to the hope and progress of the new generations that they are going to come. We had to work together and fund the education system, because every child and every girl deserve to live a life, at least by having the simplest human right, which is the education. And let's remember again, words without action are not enough. This is the real actions and meaningful actions that can make a positive difference. Thank you.
So well.
Thank you.
Soraya, thank you very much. It takes great courage to share your story and speak like this, which I know you're doing at events all around the world to try and remind people of the situation of what's happening in Afghanistan. Sadly, what's happening today in Afghanistan, the decision not to allow adolescent girls to go to school, isn't new. 11 years ago, in 2012, in Pakistan, while on her school bus traveling home from an exam, Malala Yousafzai, who we heard from, was shot by a Taliban gunman in an assassination attempt in retaliation for her activism, which included blogging about her life during the Taliban's occupation of Swat, where she lived. I had the honor of working with her to co-author her story and getting to know her father, Ziauddin, and I'm delighted that he, an education activist in his own right, a headmaster of a school in Swat, and the co-founder of the Malala Fund, is with us today. Zia, welcome.
Thank you.
Ziauddin, when you listen to Soraya and witness what's going on in Afghanistan, the attacks on the rights of women and girls, including the restrictions on education and work and freedom of movement, what's your reaction?
Yeah, thank you, Christina Lamb. And we met Somaya Faruqi in Doha, her Afghan girls robotic team, and they're also called Afghan Dreamers. While she was speaking now from the stage, I could hear in her speech the voices of 5 million Afghan girls who have been stopped from school for the last 514 days. And as she is the global champion of Education Cannot Wait as well, so her message echoed the voices of 222 million girls and boys all around the world who are not in school either because of COVID, conflicts, or because of natural catastrophes, climate catastrophes. And honestly, these 222 million children, we may be waiting for good days to help them, but they cannot wait. Their education cannot wait. They need our moral, political, and financial support immediately. And when I look at this $1.5 billion from 2023 to 2026, it may look a little burden for the rich donor countries, companies, and individuals. But it's really a very, very big deal for 222 million children all around the world. It will change their life. Christina, you know, you wrote our story, and how little money can help me and uplift me as a human being, as a person. And how with little money I was able to educate hundreds of girls and boys in my school. So having said that, coming to Afghanistan, I mean, we all know that Taliban government is an anti-women government. When they took the control of Afghanistan in 2021, the first thing they did, they replaced the Ministry of Women Affairs with the frightening Ministry of Vice and Virtue. After that, they stopped all women from going to work. Then they banned girls' secondary education. Then they stopped women from going out of their homes, traveling without a male escort. And then they stopped women and girls to go out to parks and public space, even with escorts, with male escorts. And now recently we saw that they stopped girls from university education, and then from humanitarian work. So there is no end to their misogyny. And look, why they banned girls' education? This is a very, very important question. They banned girls' education because they want a lasting, a sustainable, misogynistic society. They know that when they clip the wings of the girls, they disable them to stop them becoming a fully fledged human beings. So this is disaster, honestly. But in all this situation, we don't see the right response from the global community. Just by stopping, I ask that leaders here in this room and every part of the world, they should do everything that is in their power. Just stopping humanitarian aid to the people of Afghanistan, it is punishing the people of Afghanistan for the crimes of Taliban. It should not be done. Honestly, we should make Taliban directly accountable. They should be banned. There should be ban on their travel. They should be sanctioned. They should be tried in the International Criminal Court at Hague. And simultaneously with that, we should find alternative ways for education, for secondary education. In Afghanistan, there are secondary school, community school, online schools, and we should create more scholarships for the university students of Afghanistan. I spoke for long, but that is for this question. So, thank you.
I'd like to bring in Fawzia Koofi now. Fawzia, you've been at the center of this struggle to protect the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan for 20 years. You've been a role model for many Afghan women. You've risked your own life, as I said. When the Taliban first took over in August 2021, there was a lot of discussion, has the Taliban changed? Can they really do the same things as they did before? Because Afghanistan has changed. Millions of girls have been educated. Can you talk about that and the situation? Is it the same as before in the 90s, or how do you feel about what's happening?
I can't believe, Christina, after 21 years of struggles and gains, we're here today talking about a fundamental human rights, but also Islamic rights of women and men that girls of Afghanistan are being deprived. People of Afghanistan are frustrated. I talked to a group of female students and teachers in different parts of Afghanistan that we have to get their message to pass on today. They are very frustrated for two reasons. First of all, they're frustrated because they feel home present. They feel they're under house arrest. And obviously, after all the transformation and the hope that they had for a better Afghanistan and for them to be part of a different Afghanistan, the girls that were hoping to be the president of their country one day, the girls that were hoping to be doctors and teachers and scientists, and 20 years proved that women of Afghanistan and girls of Afghanistan are so able and capable of, being in the full front of everything. And Somaya and her sisters, like her, are just an example of, she is part of the robotic team as well. They are just example of how capable women and girls of Afghanistan are. But after all of that, you are under house arrest, literally. How do you feel? For a moment, I would like to invite everybody to put themselves in the place of women and girls of Afghanistan and feel that you are no longer allowed to leave your home, go to school, but above all, no hope. How do you feel? And they're also frustrated for the lack of action by international community. Why do we think that it's very normal to deprive in 21st century a generation for their gender from their basic fundamental right, and we think it's okay? Why do we think that it's okay? Why do we think that Taliban have all the right to do so under the name of religion and culture, which in fact, what they do has no space in our religion and no space in our culture. They're doing in contradiction to our beautiful religion and in our cultural values as well. And you have seen, Christina, because you have been to Afghanistan 3-4 times since the Taliban take over, that there have been protests of women across Afghanistan. I'm not saying it was only in Kabul because Kabul is more advanced, the capital city, but it has been in Paktika, it has been in Badakhshan, it has been in Bamyan, across Afghanistan where women, and in Kandahar, even men protested, putting their lives at risk. So that demonstrated that Afghanistan has transformed. And Taliban need to match this transformation. They need to respect the transformation. They need to adopt themselves based on this transformation. Women of Afghanistan find their ways. They do attend online classes, which obviously is not the substitute for in-person. But I believe until we don't change the political ecosystem of Afghanistan, the situation will continue like that. The Taliban, unless they don't see that there is an alternative that is coming, the Taliban will continue to enjoy. While I know their own daughters go to the best universities. In fact, I received a message this morning from a girl from one of our schools who said, "We feel the sky has fallen into our shoulder. We no longer can see the stars and the light." And she referred to Taliban girls going to best schools and universities, while Afghan girls cannot. It's not even about the rights of education. It's about the future of Afghanistan. It's about the economic. The country can suffer from the economic opportunities, the security. In fact, if you are suppressing women from education and you are changing a curricula to become more radical, you're actually paving the way for a next generation of Taliban in Afghanistan, which are being embraced by the fact that suicide bombing is okay, which using violence is okay, which in long term can endanger the global security. So my request to all of you here is to work on practical steps. First of all, we must work to establish a committee, either outside Afghanistan or in the region, to work on a curricula. There is a curricula, obviously, a very good curricula of education in Afghanistan, to provide alternative, sustainable alternative, including international curricula certification. Because yes, we do provide online school, but the girls ask me, what is next? What if they graduate from these online classes? What about their university? So we must provide them with scholarship. We must provide them with all the countries that are here. My request is, provide them with opportunities of scholarship. Make it exceptional for Afghan girls. Make your policies easier for Afghan girls to access. Provide them with, with medical studies, because Taliban do not ban medical studies. More female doctors, because we do need more female doctors. We now have some nursing school and medical colleges open in Afghanistan. We need to make it across Afghanistan. We need to pressurize Taliban, because without that, I know that some pressure work because they are now divided. Some prominent Taliban ministers are talking about, the fact that there is a need for school. So I think pressure works. And at the end, I think we should really take the situation of Afghanistan as a global human rights crisis and take it that it can reach our own borders at any time. It can reach your own border. Discrimination in Afghanistan does not mean that your own borders can be safe. We must think of those girls and those women and mothers and fathers who emotionally send me crying messages, asking for us to support them. What can I do without your support? What can she do? What can he do without your support? We must all unite our forces, because there is such an invisible power in unity to help people of Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you for that very passionate plea. The imposition, as we said, of restrictions on women recently included a ban on women working for NGOs, which was a move condemned by the international community, including the United Nations, and recently saw the UN Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohamed, visit Afghanistan. She has recorded some reflections on her visit, and we will just hear those now.
For more than 500 days, the Taliban authorities in Afghanistan have denied secondary school girls their basic right to an education. This must end immediately. The international community must continue to be united in its urgency to address the educational needs and rights of Afghan girls. It's imperative that we stand in solidarity with these girls and amplify their voices. They are not alone. We must also continue funding life-saving initiatives that provide access to education, to food, healthcare, and other essential services. Innovative solutions, such as the availability of online courses, are good initiatives, but they are not enough. We must grow the movement for change in Afghanistan, recognizing that a society based on exclusion and repression can never flourish. A bird cannot fly on one wing. Education cannot wait. The UN's Global Fund for Education in Emergencies and Protracted Crises and its partners on the ground are making incredible strides to provide community-based education and accelerated learning programs to children and adolescents across some of the most underserved areas of Afghanistan. 58% of the learners reached are girls. Education is the uniting force that will help us in our race to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. I urge all donors, our partners, gathered here today to continue to step up funding for Education Cannot Wait. Let us make sure we do everything in our power to ensure that no girl in Afghanistan, or any other country for that matter, is left behind. Thank you.
Gordon Brown, you've been outspoken on this issue, not least urging the international community not just to express outrage, but as Fawzia spoke about, to actually do something and to ensure that education can continue in Afghanistan. And Education Cannot Wait, which you chair, was one of the first organizations to support the education response. That's only part of what you've been urging. So in your capacity as the UN Special Envoy for Global Education, what's your response to what you've heard today and your advice to the international community about what to do?
The reason we're here having a session on Afghanistan today is that this is a fight in support of Somaya and Fawzia with these eloquent and brave speeches that they made This is a fight we cannot afford to lose. This is a struggle we must win. It is absolutely fundamental that no regime, no religious order, no dictator should prevent a girl from having the right to an education. And that's why we must turn words into action now. And I want to suggest a number of things based on visits I've had to Afghanistan, but also my contact with such brave people who are fighting this. We must stand in solidarity with all the girls who are demonstrating on the streets of Afghanistan. They are risking arrest and torture and their lives. We must support the community schools. 800,000 girls are being educated almost underground, and we must give financial support to make sure UNICEF, Germany, other countries that are doing this can make sure these girls can continue to go to school and more can go to school. We must support those girls who have left Afghanistan for Pakistan so that they can get education where they are as refugees and displaced. And we must press every single government in the world, within the United Nations, within the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Gulf Cooperation Council, the Muslim majority countries that can have influence over the Taliban and the religious leaders in Afghanistan. We must press them to continue to pressure the regime, and particularly the religious leaders, that every girl should now have the right to get back to school. This is an abuse of human rights. This is a violation of girls' right to education. This is something that cannot be allowed to exist in a civilized world, and all of us, and I hope today we will send a message across the world that every country, every organization, every NGO will fight for this basic right. Every girl should have an education and the right to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, but I'd like to thank my wonderful panelists and appeal to everybody listening today to heed their calls. You heard these impressive, eloquent, passionate Afghan women talking about the situation. And listen to their calls to help Afghan girls. Imagine if they were your daughters or sisters forced to stay at home, seeing their dreams slip away from them, and as Fawzia talked about, feeling as if the sky had fallen. So please help them, and thank you very much, all of you, for your reflections.
Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you, dear panelists, for that very powerful session and appeal for the girls of Afghanistan. Time for a break now. And just please have a look at this amazing interactive exhibit. And for those joining online, you'll have lots of behind the scenes to look at. You'll be with us in presence. But the next session after the break is really important. It's going to be highlighting the donor pledges and country commitments with ECW strategic partners. And so please, please, we're going to have to shorten the break just a little bit. But since we need you all back for this important pledging part of the session, 10:55 back in this room. See you shortly. Thank you.
Online host here at Geneva for the first ever high-level financing conference by ECW. Welcome from wherever you're joining in the world. Now, as you can see, these are all the delegates. This is a packed venue here today. And thank you for joining from wherever you are in the world. So in just a few minutes, as the break begins, we're also going to give you 2 to 3 minutes break. And join me afterwards as I go backstage behind the scenes into the exhibition space, and we'll hear from some of the delegates. We'll hear their voices and their thoughts of the sessions so far. So enjoy your break, and we'll see you just in a couple of minutes.